Title: Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. Character: the speaker, the owner of the woods, and the horse are the primary characters in Stopping by the Woods on a Snowy Evening. The speaker is a man moving through the woods in a carriage. He pauses for a moment to take in the enigmatic beauty of the quiet, snow-covered woods, despite the fact that it appears that he has obligation at the other end of his journey. Another one is the owner of the woods. Although he isn't mentioned in the poem, the speaker makes reference to him in the opening line. And the last character is the horse. The horse asks the speaker why they have stopped as he shakes his harness bells. One character is directly and one character is indirectly mentioned by the speaker in this poetry. Due to the speaker's use of personification while referring to the horse, he can be considered a third character. The poem's speaker, a person with obligation, takes a brief break from them to take in the natural beauty of the woods, as they cover themselves in snow. He is clearly instructed by the gorgeous, deep and gloomy woods, and would like to stay there longer in thought. But he has obligation to others, and in order to meet those obligations, he must continue his journey. The speakers offer us the viewpoint of an adult who longs to unwind and enjoy nature, but must compress this enjoyment because of his obligation in life. The proprietor of the woods, where traveler rests, in this figure to whom the narrator is alluding in an indirect manner. The narrator believes he is acquired with this individual. He must be a very wealthy man, because he owned both this one land field property and a home in the hamlet. The fact that the landowner is the village and won't notice that the narrator stops on his journey, which would amount to trespassing on the man's property, seems to relax the narrator. The setting: the speaker is in the poem is traveling at night through the snow and pauses with his horse near the woods by a neighbor's house to watch the snow falling around him. The next one is plot. American poet Robert Frost penned Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening in 1922, and included it is his book New Hampshire, which was released in 1923. The poem is told from the viewpoint of a traveler who pauses to see the snow falling in the forest and think on both nature and society as a result. Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening by Robert Frost. Whose woods these are I think I know. His house is in the village too. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the two woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. The meaning of stopping by woods on a snowy evening presents the poet or speaker in a dramatic situation where he has the attraction of a nature to pull his attention and the responsibilities at home to fulfill. The poem's main idea is the seduction of nature versus mundane responsibilities and obligations. Meaning of stanza 1. Whose woods there are I think I know. His house is in the village through. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. The speaker pauses briefly before describing the words and expressing his skepticism of the owner. He then has a firm opinion on the local who lives in this village. He, however, thinks about him with certainty that he would be unaware of his presence in his woods and that it would be a receiving the snowfall at his hour of the night. The poet has the opportunity to visit the woods of owner before arriving at his house, because it appears that both of them are from the same village. He is considering the likelihood that the landowner was not aware of the snow falling while he was observing this spectacle in his woods. The stanza contributes to the underlying idea of nature seductions. Meaning of stanza 2. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. The speaker then faces his stead. It's interesting to note that he believes that the horse will view his stop as a strange act. It would be strange because there isn't farm close by and his master frequently visit the frozen lake and woods. And to top it all off, it is the year's darkest evening. The power of nature seduction can draw the speaker in. The verse illustrates this side issue and develops the main theme of the poet's menial responsibilities. Meaning of stanza 3. He gave his harness bell a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and down a flake. The speaker watches his horse carefully and sees that he shakes the bells. He realizes that the horse is making these noises to alert his owner that he might have made a mistake by halting there. When the speaker hears this sound, he or she deduces that he is also another sound, which is the wind sweeping and carrying the snowflakes to the ground. This verse depicts that introduction of nature elements into the environment seduction, where the poet has almost completely lost his sense of forward motion. Even so, he musses on it. The stanza expands on the lone theme of nature's attraction. Meaning of stanza 4. The woods are lovely, dark, and deep, but I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep. The speaker described the woods as being both beautiful and dark. He also claims that they are highly deeply, both in terms of understanding and rest-taking. He does, however, have a number of tasks to complete. After returning home, he has a big distance to travel and promises to keep the numerous of people. The distance he must travel through is the main focus of his promises. The repetition of this strain makes the poem interesting and esoteric, adding further to the main idea of the seduction of nature versus the poet's obligation. Summary of the poem. Popularity. Written by Robert Frost. This poem was published in 1923. It was written to capture the conflict between man and nature and also to highlight the difference between wishes and obligations we face in our lives. It has, however, become one of the most well-known poems in English literature. Stopping by woods on a snowy evening as a nature poem, because the poem is about nature. It is written from the perspective of an adult who stops by the woods to enjoy nature's mesmerizing beauty. The first stanza's expressions of stopping continues until the traveler decides to resume his journey. The central point of the poem is the expression of not knowing the woods and then realizing one's responsibilities. The eye-catching and bewitching beauty of the woods in the snowy evening, on the other hand, stays with the readers. Major themes in Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening is the poem is composed of an adult's thought about why he stops and why he wants to stay in the lap of nature, forgetting about his worldly affairs. The traveler wishes to pause in the peaceful woods to watch the snowfall. He claims to know whose woods these are, but he is confident that the owner will not notice his presence because he is in the village. He is tempted to stay longer, but obligations and the long distance force him to leave the woods. He says he has to travel a lot, which means he has a lot of responsibilities. As a result, he sets his wishes aside and resumes his journey. This poem is about the boundaries and limits in which human beings pass their lives and which do not allow them to get derailed from their respective paths. Seemingly simple, this poem by Robert Frost is loaded with meanings on account of the use of the following literary devices. Number 1 is metaphor. There are no metaphors in the poem. The poem does, however, contain 2 extended metaphors. The last line of the third stanza, sweep of easy wind and downy flake, and the second metaphor, and miles to go before I sleep, are repeated. Miles represents life journey, while it represents death. The second one is personification. Robert Frost is the second stanza. When the horse stops, he mildly personifies the horse's thinking, and in the third stanza, he gives a sign to the rider. He gives his harness bells a shake, to ask if there is some mistake. It shows as if the horse is a human being who understands his owner's needs or inquires if they have to stop. The third one is imaginary. Imaginary is used to elicit feelings in readers via their 5 senses. The poet has used image to convey a sense of sight, such as wood, houses, and a lake, and this image helps readers envision the woods are source of solace and comfort for a lonely traveler. The fourth one is alliteration. Alliteration is a repetition of the same consonant sounds in the same lines, such as the consonant use of W, WH, and S sounds. The following pieces are examples of alliteration from the poem. Watch his woods, sounds the swift, his house. And the fifth is assonance. Assonance is a repetition of the vowel sounds in the same lane, such as the sound of E and I come in quick succession, and he will not see me stopping, and in he give his harness bells as a shake. 60th is consonant. Consonant is a repetition of consonant sounds such as the W and TH sounds. In whose woods are these? I believe, and the W sound into watch his woods fill up with snow. Euphony. It refers to a pleasing sound to the ears, while the journey through the forest is lonely. According to Robert Frost, the woods are not haunting or frightening, but rather provide comfort and calm. The woods are represented as an spoiled world in which the traveler wishes to remain. As a result, it is euphony. Also, most of the poetic devices are part of literary devices, yet some devices are only used in poems. The analysis of some of the major poetic devices used in this poem is given here. Stanza. A stanza is poetic form with a variable number of lines. It could consonant of 3 or 4 lines. A stanza is made up of 4 lines. Quatrain. In Persian poetry, in a quatrain is a 4-line stanza. Each stanza in this poem is also a quatrain, though the rhyme scheme is a bit different. Rhyme-ism. The whole poem follows the AABA rhyme-ism. Frost has use and rhyme in every first, second, and fourth line of the poem. In the poem, first, second, and fourth lines, each stanza's third line rhymes with the next stanza. For example, no, true, and snow rhyme in the first stanza, and here rhymes with near in the second. Truchi. Truchi refers to the use of one stressed and one unstressed syllable in a single line as shown in the following poetic device. Stressed and unstressed syllables. In Truchi, the first syllable is stressed and the second is unstressed, as in whose woods these are. I think I know, in this pattern continues throughout the poem. Repetition. This is a repetition of the verse "and miles to go before I sleep" and "miles to go before I sleep," which has created a musical quality in the poem. Refrain. The lines that are repeated again at some distance in the poems are called refrain. Therefore, the repetition of the last 2 lines of the poem with the same words are also an example of refrain.